So today I have a really cool game to talk about. This game is called Inkulinati, I believe. That's the closest I can come to anyway. It definitely has a weird name, but it's a really cool game. Although I do believe that this game will be divisive for a few reasons. There are some people who I think are really going to enjoy it, and other people who will kind of probably find it boring or slow paced and not enough action for them. But before we get into Inkulinati, please hit that like, subscribe button. Helps the channel grow and makes me feel better about myself. And don't you want to do that? Don't you want to make someone feel better about themselves? I mean, you are a good person, right? I'm sure you are. Anyway, on to Inkulinati. So one of the big reasons why I say that this game is going to be divisive is because the story isn't really a story. The game is about the game Inkulinati. I don't mean like in a super meta way, but I do mean in the fact that there isn't much more than just becoming like an ink master. No, not that kind of ink master. There's no Dave Navarro here, but an Inkulinati master. And it's essentially based on a game, a summon type game, where you're able to draw up to 5 characters on your team. And they can range from anywhere from like an archer to a spearman to even up to like a snail that can eat things. And your party will grow and change. You can recruit different people and they can do different things. But you're represented most of the time by something called a tiny, which is like a little avatar of your character, the one that you decide to represent. And there are a few different characters in the game that you can choose from, but your essential goal is just to collect ink, draw characters, and then win in turn-based combat, essentially. Now, there is far more to it than that, but I'll get into that when we talk about combat. For now, though, that's basically the story. You see, you start the game off, you're sort of instructed to go to the academy, which is a tutorial of sorts, and then you can start your own journey. But with the idea of you just basically playing this game, in fact, even the duels that you have against the other Inkulinati masters, it's not like hateful. It's not like a battle to survive. No, like you're doing it so that you can become a master. It's almost like if they took a game like chess and this was the video game version of people playing chess. That doesn't sound good. No, it's better than that, trust me. But what I'm saying is there's just not like a huge, deep story. It's not like Pokemon where, yeah, the goal of Pokemon is to be good at Pokemon. You're to be raising them, fighting them. But then there's all these other like little stories that happen, people you meet. It becomes like its own world in itself. But this is not like that. No, it's very clear that you are just playing this game. You are being represented by this little tiny and you're drawing these characters. But I will say, like, graphically, this game is incredibly clear, crisp. It looks really good. The thing I found the most impressive was either the hand, and it's one of the coolest little animations. It's when you either use a hand action, which again I'll get to, or you're drawing one of your beasts, and then there's the background, and not just the background of the battle, but when you look off the board or the paper, you can actually see a background of where you're playing this, like in a wooded area or in an area that has like fire. It just looks very vivid, and I just think that looks pretty cool. But I will say too that the game doesn't require a lot when it comes to performance, because most of the animations are almost staggering. They're kind of block, if you will. It's not the most fluid kind of movement, but again, they're supposed to be drawings, and it would all make sense. Now, onto the combat. And then for me, this is of course the best part, and I think for most people, because, well, that's a majority of the game. It's essentially kind of like a summoner style game, where you do have a character, like I said, you have a tiny, as they call him, which is like a micro version of your character, and you're on the battlefield. Now, the thing is you don't have many attacks. You do have quite a bit of defense, or at least quite a bit of health, but you have to draw or summon different enemies to your side by using ink. Each beast will consume a certain amount of ink to produce, and you can also like regenerate the ink as well, whether it be beating enemies or just finding an ink spot or even breaking some of the stuff in the actual game. Just like random objects that they have in the game usually does produce ink. It's not very difficult to come by. So you're constantly regenerating it. For me, it was never a problem where I would run out of ink and I wasn't able to summon or draw any characters. So don't really worry about running out of ink or using too much ink. Again, up until like very late, I never even had an issue with this. But I will say each beast that you draw does have different characteristics. Everything, like I said, from like an archer to a spearman. Obviously, we kind of are familiar with what they do, and in their own right, a swordsman is going to have a decent defense, decent attack. Spear is going to have some range, but some really good attack, maybe not so good at defense. Archer, definitely not good defense, but has that ranged attack. But then there's a bunch of other characters. And this is what I like about it, is getting to know all of the different beasts that you can either recruit, draw, bring to your team, and how to use them appropriately. Because I can't get into all of them, because there is a ton of them. But that, for me, was one of the highlights of this game, is the fact that there was so many different strategies that you could implement while you're playing the game. And that's only one side of it. The other thing that I really liked about it was the environment itself. Because you see, you weren't just fighting the enemy, you were often fighting the board. An apocalypse would happen, essentially, where the paper would catch on fire. And so you would run out of turns. You had to make adjustments. You had to figure out either how to push your enemy into the fire or how to beat them before the time runs out. And at first, I liked the idea of like a long, drawn-out strategic battle. But after playing the game for a while, I understood why they had things like the apocalypse counter and things of that nature, because the game itself, even at like 5 to 10 rounds, is pretty long. Like, there's a lot going on. That's 10 different beasts moving, that's the environment moving, and then there's your hand action. Get your head out of the gutter, not those kind of hand actions. There's a ton of other things you can do with your drawer, your Inkulinati. Now, these things range from like healing your characters or giving them halos, which is sort of like a buff, gives them more damage, more accuracy, things of that nature. Or you can actually hurt the beasts of your enemy. And these moves are limited. You can only do them every so often. I think some actually consume ink, so you can't just spam these and use it to like cheese your enemy or something, but it does offer another level of strategy to the game. Another thing that I really have to mention is when you think about this style of game, you're probably thinking a very slow-paced, almost relaxing game, even though it is, battling and its strategy and every move matters, but they're usually slower paced. Not this one. This one can get chaotic and crazy, especially when you get into different environments. The level itself becomes an enemy. There's all sorts of interactive things that are just on that paper. And it can be anything, like I said, like fire is a big one in this one. And not just the apocalypse fire. There's other fire that plays a huge role in how you play the game. There's also other things that can happen. At the same time, the game's actually pretty funny as well. Some of the characters like stick their butt out at each other, and that causes them to have a headache or feel nauseous. There's some funny aspects to this game. Actually, quite a few, if I'm being honest. Even the way the Inkulinati masters deal with each other and how they talk to each other is pretty funny. It's a very interesting game. And like I said, yes, the story is kind of light, but what is there is engaging. Like, you enjoy the ride. It's just more set up as you're playing Inkulinati. Not like there is another level to the game. It's in like Final Fantasy or something. And that's ultimately what I meant. I don't want to confuse anyone. And that's also why I'm not going into really deep strategies when it comes to combat, because I'm not going to lie. There is like a 30-minute tutorial or so in this game, and you should pay attention to it, because there are different levels of strategy and complexity to the game that you should understand. And if I try to explain it, I'm going to ruin that. But I definitely don't want to scare anyone away from it or to make them feel like they might be bored. That was never my experience. I really enjoyed the game. In fact, I was thinking, how could I improve the game? What would be my suggestion? And I couldn't come up with one. The only thing that I could think of was something that the game already had. So when you play the Academy mode and you duel one of the masters, there's like this cinematic scene between two like real live actors as they're dressed up like these characters. And I thought that was really cool. And I just wish that was also something that happened every time you battled one of the masters, like while you're on your journey. I thought that would be cool, just to add like another little bit of flair to the game. But honestly, it's a really great game. And I do think it will be divisive, though. I do think there are some people who are going to just not enjoy this style of game. It's too close to a strategy RPG. It's too close to a game that is a little bit slower in a lot of people's minds, even though the game's quick. But the fact that it's not just fast-paced action constantly, something that like a certain amount of people are just not going to like. But me personally, I really like it. And I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Really great game. If you're thinking about checking it out, definitely like wishlist it. Maybe it'll go on sale. I think even if you're interested in it, everyone should check it out just because there's not many games like this. And whenever there is a team that comes out and makes something unique and creative, we should definitely support that. But that's just my thoughts on it. Curious what your thoughts are. Anything and everything down in the comment section below. It's much appreciated. I love each and every one of you guys. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.